Okay, then. Well, good morning and welcome everyone joining us today for our Cranberry Country Chamber of Commerce Speaker Series and today's Stump the QuickBooks Expert, co-sponsored by Cranberry Country Chamber and Rockland Trust. Itamar Khalif, who is the coordinator of our speaker series, is on vacation this week. So Pam and I are taking over. I'm Valerie Glynn, the Chamber President. Pam DeZura is admin and marketing and holds the keys to the kingdom as she monitors the Zoom presentation. Our speaker today is Ed Jaworski, Advanced Certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor and Partner, SMB Partners, Inc. Before we turn it over to Ed, Pam, how many people do we have today? Around 10?
Well, there's about 14 attendees right now.
Ed, would it be helpful if you know who is here? Just quickly go around and say your name, your company, and your position in the company.
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay. Betty, why don't we start with you?
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Betty Bissonnette. I have a bookkeeping practice in Middleborough. I'm a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, not advanced. I haven't had the time to do the the studying or the test, but yeah, I've been in business since 2012, and I'm here to just get any good tips that I can hear.
There are always questions about QuickBooks, no matter
yes,
what,
yes.
They're always changing it too. Bennett, do you want to introduce yourself and
make sure you unmute?
There you go.
Bennett, you need to unmute.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
I'm a business consultant, and I'm currently working with Art Stammers from AWS Business Services. One of the key clients we're trying to work with is in the automotive industry and retail and doctors as well. And I've been doing accounting as a CPA for 35 years.
Thank you, Bennett. Corrine?
Good morning. I work at HMH. We are a religious manufacturing company, and I am the office manager, and I handle all the financials on QuickBooks. Good morning.
God bless you. Huh? Guy?
Hi, I'm Guy Empey. I'm with Jack Conway Realty. I'm a real estate agent out of the Lakeville office, and just here to learn. I'm technology challenged, so anything helps me. And believe me, I've woken up one of my kids at 3 in the morning to help me get the TV off of Spanish because I sat on the remote. So I'm challenged, and I know better not than to wake my wife up. So. That's why we've been together 36 years, because I didn't wake my wife up.
Thanks, Guy. Good advice. Your first QuickBooks tip. Jeff?
Good morning, everybody. Jeff Martucci. I am the incoming treasurer of the Bridgewater Business Association and looking to take on some more of the responsibilities for the bookkeeping for the association.
Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for coming. Teresa?
Yes, good morning. I'm Teresa McNulty. I'm with the Buzz Around, and I'm just starting to take over the bookkeeping piece of it, and I'm very technologically challenged. I'm kind of new to QuickBooks, so I'm here to learn.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. Susie?
Hi, I'm Susie Clasby. I am co-owner of Rekindled Home. We do have a CPA, but I do enter information into QuickBooks and just wanted to get more information, make sure I'm doing everything that I need to do correctly.
Thank you, Susie. Pam won't let me do that because she's yeah, you have to know what you're doing, that's for sure. Chantel.
Good morning. I'm coming all the way from Denver, Colorado. So my video will stay off because it's 6:30 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
But I own a small bookkeeping service company for small businesses in the Colorado area. And I also work part-time for online CFO service company out of Florida. And I am a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, but I could use some more knowledge. So I'm excited.
Thanks, Chantel. Pam?
My name is Pam Tozy. I work with Itamar at Rockland Trust. I've known him, I've been there 15 years, so I think he started around the same time. I work in the Treasury Management Division, and I have a boatload of clients that use QuickBooks, and I just know the surface. I know enough to be dangerous, and I just want to gain a bit of knowledge.
Thanks, Pam. Kim?
I'm Kim Bond. I work for Charles River Contracting, and I manage the office and all the pieces that come with that. I've taken a number of classes with Ed, actually, and I was interested to hear what new tricks he had to offer.
Hi, Kim.
Good to see you, Ed.
Ginny Landis, it's good to not see you. Are you able to get audio? Ginny, you allowed to, can you speak? Oh, it's not Ginny.
No, she moved.
Oh, okay.
She's not unmuting.
Oh, she doesn't have micro cameras, so she's
Okay.
gonna. Well, Ginny does a business services company, so I'm sure she uses QuickBooks quite a bit. And let's see, we have Charlie. Would you like to introduce yourself? And unmute yourself.
Better?
Much better.
Charlie Miller, Business Solutions Advisor Group. Sorry I'm late. I had a little trouble getting to the right spot on the link.
Well, you weren't the only one.
Misery loves company. Thank you.
April, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Avril Jackson Black. I'm a nurse practitioner and owner of a small healthcare business, and I'm the CEO who has been charged to keep the books. And my accountant suggested we use QuickBooks, and I started last year, and it's been a lot of growing pains. So I was excited to hear about this.
We're all laughing with you, April. We know about it. So Rick Siegel?
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having this website webinar. So I'm Rick Siegel. I own Training Wheels. We're a motorcycle school. We teach people to ride motorcycles, and I started it 22 years ago. We have 7 locations in Mass. I live on the Cape, so there's one on the Cape, one in Plimpton, Brockton, and that's pretty much the South Shore area. And as it's an exciting industry, and I used to ride a lot of motorcycles, and that's why I got into it. And of course, as you all know, I'm spending more time on QuickBooks and behind a keyboard than on a motorcycle these days. So it's I don't tell anybody that. They all think I have a glorious life of riding motorcycles all day, but I'm really just a nerd behind a computer. And I use QuickBooks for quite a long time, and I find myself doing a lot of workarounds. And I can't help but to think there's a better way of doing a lot of the processes that I do daily. So that's why I'm here. So thanks. Good morning.
Thanks, Rick. Margaret LaForest, welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself? We have a...
Yeah. Thanks, Valerie. Great to be at the Cranberry County Chamber. It's been a while since I've checked in with this group. I am with the Mass Office of Business Development, part of Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito's administration's executive team. And my role is connecting with companies and getting them connected to any program, grant, or incentive that we or our partners have. So great to see everybody. And I picked this one because I do a lot of volunteer work with nonprofits and am their QuickBooks person, and exactly the same as everybody else. If there's a chance to learn tips and tricks, this is it. And I think this is just a great chamber program. So kudos to you for putting it on, and thanks for having me.
Thanks, Margaret. Kathleen?
Good morning, everybody. I actually have a dual role. I currently work for Chairpack North America as the HR manager, and I also have my own small travel business, KMB Travel. And I am just exploring QuickBooks, so I thought that this might be just an opportunity to just kind of hear, some of the pros and challenges that you might be experiencing, because I definitely need to get a bookkeeping system in place for my business. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. And we have 774-259-4076. I don't know your name, but would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Stacy Redlawn. I'm from GS Redlawn & Sons in Middleborough, and we are excavating contractors. And I just want to see if I can find any new tips here with you guys.
Well, thank you for joining us. We know your company well.
Thank you.
And I thought I saw Fitzroy sign in. He's with Jack Conway, but why don't we turn it over to Ed? And Ed, it's all yours.
Okay, great. So this is a little bit different seminar than the ones I usually run. I'm sort of putting myself out there, looking for any pet peeves or issues or things that people are running into that they're wondering, is there a better way to do this? If you could just fire away in the chat, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat window on issues that you're having. And before some of those come in, I have a couple of sort of general tips and techniques that I can get started with. I'll be talking about both QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop products. So it doesn't matter which one you're using. I work with them both all the time. A little background about me, besides the initial bio, I'm an advanced certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor. I'm certified advanced in both the desktop and the online products. I've been working with QuickBooks for about 20 years. I run a lot of QuickBooks seminars and webinars and presentations on different specific verticals and industry specific groups, as well as just sort of general sessions. So I'm kind of putting myself out there with this one, like fire at me and let me see what I can come up with. I didn't really see, I guess you can use the reactions button with a thumbs up. Who is using QuickBooks Online? I see
I am.
Yeah, there's no one knows how to use it. All right, so I see like a few of you, almost half. Okay, I'm starting to see those come in. All right, and then I'm assuming the rest are using QuickBooks Desktop, or you're kind of wondering which one to use. All right, so okay, that's great. Does anyone before you start firing in the chat window questions, let me just fire a couple of generic tips and techniques to get started. So, first I got to share my screen. Hang on a second. Okay, you're seeing my screen now?
Okay. Yep.
All right, let me minimize that, and I want to switch to my QuickBooks window. Hang on. All right, so here's the QuickBooks dashboard. This is a QuickBooks Online sample company that I'm looking at. So just a generic tip: if you're the navigation bar on the left is the new button here. So if I do a new invoice. Just get started with a couple of softball tips. So if you're in any date field, so I'm in the invoice date field, there's several date shortcuts. In fact, if you hit Control, let's see, so it's Alt Shift question mark. All right, wait a second. So there's any date field has these generic shortcuts. If I hit the letter W, the first letter in week, it goes to the beginning of the week. If I hit K, it goes to the end of the week. M goes to the beginning of the month. H, the last letter month, goes to the end of the month. And likewise, the same thing with year. Y and R give you the beginning of the year. Letter T brings you back to today. And this shortcut is true in both the Windows version and the desktop version. So it's a quick little tip. If you're in any kind of a quantity field, a numeric field, QuickBooks has a little online calculator. If I want to hit, say, 23, and I want to hit the multiplication times 12 and a half, And so I'm doing the rate. When you first start, it says you got a bad thing. If I hit the tab key, it's going to do the calculation of whatever that math is. So I can do a little online calculator to do quick and dirty math. So any numeric field can have that little online calculator. So that's a useful tip. Do we have any questions in the chat room? Let me see if I can the chat. Okay, so for nonprofit, yeah, okay. There's a couple ways to deal with. All right, so the question is, for nonprofits, is there a good way to track restricted funds and release of those funds to in QBO when a fundraising CRA platform is used? So nonprofit, there's a couple of different things you can do. One of them, let me go back to this, cancel this. Nonprofit has, if I go to the gear and accountant settings, under advanced, there are two categories. You can turn on classes or locations. So a lot of nonprofits will use classes for like sort of your high level segregated versus non-segregated funds. So once classes is on, and then locations is an alternate way that is also attached to every invoice, and you can use the locations field for, you can label it for things like department, division. So department might be a useful way to kind of give you some sort of more delineation. So classes and locations give you one way. And then once you turn that on, going to the gear again, and you go to all lists, go back to that gear, all lists, it gives you now a place to specify your classes. There it goes. So I've got classes right here. So I can use, create a new class, move that out of the way. So I can have restricted funds. And then I can have unrestricted funds. And then you might have a generic overhead. So you can have subclasses. For instance, if I want to have admin costs as a subclass of restricted or unrestricted. So so you can build out the class thing, and once you turn on classes, then on any transactions, if I do an invoice, for instance, back to new, oops, invoice, click there, invoice. Come on. Or let me go to, I don't know why that button's not working. So I'm going to create a new invoice. Somewhere. Yeah, right. Let me just go to an existing one. I don't know why that new button's not working in this sample payment sample file. So it exposes now that once I turn on those fields, it's available on all new transactions. Come on. I'm having a response time in this. Let me try it on a sales receipt. Yeah, I'm not getting a response on some of these buttons. I'm not sure what's going on, but same thing on expenses. If I go to a new expense, for instance, all activity now exposes these fields. What is going on? It's not opening any of this detail.
Maybe you need to refresh your page or clear your cache.
Yeah. Here we go. Come on. All right, new expense, but now I've added this department field. I haven't added any new departments, and I also got the class fields on every line. So you can flag any costs to these codes. Now that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can use the item list. Every transaction, you can enter categories or items. So if you've got specific programs, you can track the programs by using the service list. What program are you doing? I'm running you're running a dinner or a fundraising event, auction or something like that. So you can use the product and service is another way to isolate those by using that flag, and then I can use track expenses and costs by product and service. And then an additional way is tags. Tags is a field that's available on any transaction, at the header level. You can use tags for tracking, alternate methods, and then that will and then you can run reports, give me, all the activity, that's tagged a certain way. So you got multiple options. The problem with classes is that once you get too many, like more than 10 or 12 or something, the P&L by class report gets a little unwieldy. But the tags and the product and service buttons kind of give you a little bit more granularity or more scalability. I think that you can find a little bit more ways when you have many different classes that you want to track. So that's what most nonprofits do, is they'll use either the class field or the product and service field to isolate things going on at different levels. Hope that answered your question. Let me see. What else do we have? So
Pam said, going back to invoice and dates, if we enter a due date that doesn't coincide, is that with an invoice, Pam?
yeah.
If we enter a due date that doesn't coincide with a date associated with terms, why does it change back when I hit save?
So Pam, are you using the QuickBooks desktop?
She's online.
Online.
So with online doesn't really have the functionality to pay attention to like discount terms. So if you're talking about if you want to have an invoice that has a 2% 10 net 30 or something, those kinds of, you can put the terms on the invoice.
Well, let me explain. So, for instance, we're with the chamber, and our due dates are the first of a particular membership renewal month.
Yep.
So, for instance, I run invoices today for membership due June 1st. We always give them advance notice. So the terms can be 60 days, it could be 90 days, it could be whatever, but it depends on, if I do it today, it's automatically going to put it in for 30 days from today or 60 days from today. But I want it to be the first of a month. They're due on the 1st of June, or they're due the 1st of July. So if I enter the due date myself, as soon as I hit save, it reverts back.
Yeah. So
then I have to go in and change it again.
Yeah. In QBO, the terms are always going to be calculated from the invoice date. So it's going to, we got net 30, it's always going to be 30 days from whatever the invoice date is. You can't, if instead of using a numeric term, you can have a term that's due first day of a month.
Okay.
Instead of having, net 30, you can say first.
Okay.
Okay. This is new. They didn't actually have these date specific days, but and then if I'm gonna bill, say within 10 days at the end of the month, instead of being, say if I bill on the 28th, instead of being due in 2 days, it's going to be 1 day of the following month. That's what the second thing does.
Okay.
So instead of giving someone a shorthand, they give them a little extra days when you get really close to that first day of the month, say.
Okay.
So we have those terms. So now I'm within 10 days at the end of the month, my 2 days, June 1st.
Okay.
Right. So then if this if I was in the middle of the month, it's going to know that the first day of the next month. So it's a term. So instead of using a net X number of days term, you have to use one of these special due by certain the month terms.
Okay, so is that in the drop down or where does that?
That's when in the drop down when you create terms, and another way to find terms. I think there's a under the all lists.
Oh, okay.
Under all lists, I think there's a place to put. There's terms over here too, so you can add them from here.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
that was a good one. All right, let's.
And Kim Bond wants to know, is there a way to set the calculator to only 2 decimal places? In other words, if I multiply something by 1.0625 for sales tax.
Yeah. So Kim, you're on QBO, right? So desktop does have a setting for the number of decimal points, but online doesn't have. I don't think it has online. Let me check under lists. Move this other way. So under accountant settings, there is a format button. I don't think it's going to cover the decimal points on any particular thing. So let me go back to that. Accountant settings. Under advanced. There is a, oops. There is something for number format in general. But it only gives you, it just controls placement of the comma in the decimal for like if you're a European format. So that's not going to help you. Yeah. So online doesn't really have a way to control the decimals. Desktop does have a way to, fine tune as a user preference, not in QBO.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now, Rick, is it easy to it is easy to download my credit card statement each month, and most of the transactions are the same month to month. However, I need to enter the class on every transaction. Is there a way to memorize the transactions, including class?
Yeah. So Rick, are you using QBO or desktop? But
He said, is the transition from desktop to online version a manageable process or?
okay. Yeah. Okay. So the process to convert from desktop to online is, I would say, yes, manageable. It just takes some getting used to. There's it's a different product, so it's a different look and feel. Things are in a little bit different place. Most of the basic functionality is the same. Like they both do invoices, payments, estimates, sales receipts, expense. Intuit online has a distinction in expense and a check. It's really kind of the same thing. Bills. So all the same thing is there. It's just kind of in a different place, organized a little bit differently. So as far as credit, a memorized transaction, if you under the banking menu is where you attach your credit card and bank statements to Intuit. So as things clear, they'll populate in the in this banking center. So this is 25 transactions I've downloaded since the last time I looked at it. Now QuickBooks will recognize if I've already recorded something, it's going to find that is already in my register to present a match. Now, if you need to always add a class, that's where you come rules in. So say I want to do, I've got this Hicks hardware. I'm not sure if I've got class. So this is Hicks hardware. I want to create a rule from this transaction. Let's see, so I'm going to go into, let me just create a generic rule. Hang on. Find a match instead of a match. Here's create a rule. So the rule is give it a label. Just fix my typo. So when I get money out and this group contains Hicks hardware, I want to classify as expense. I want to put it into a certain category. So say this is always going to be repairs. I can put a certain tag on. I can specify the class. as part of the rule. Or if I'm using department, I didn't have any departments yet, but that's the location field. So as part of the rule, you can specify the class. And then whenever these conditions are met, it finds an expense that has Hicks hardware, somewhere in the description, it's going to automatically assign that class. So those rules are going to help you make sure you sign those classes correctly. A memorized transaction is going to be anything that's a recurring basis. Like if you have like a monthly rent or something, you can set up a recurring transaction. So say if I find an example of something, so Hall Property, say this is my monthly rent. So if I go into this detail, so once I'm in any given transaction, I can, under the More button, I can, not under More. It used to be under More. Oh, I'm in a bill payment. Sorry, I can memorize a bill, not a bill payment. If I'm in a bill, excuse me, under More, sorry, not under More, I'm in a bill. No, make recurring. I'm looking right at it. Make recurring is memorize transaction. So that's going to take this data and it's going to allow me to memorize it on a scheduled basis every first day of the month, starting now and ending. If no end date, it's just going to be indefinite until I stop it. So anything, and then the memorized transactions, you can have a class on those. So anything that's a recurring on a regular basis with a set of, if it's not even a set amount, you can memorize it with 0, and then you'll have to edit the amount month by month. Like, for interest, you got splits between interest and payment on a loan, for example. You could do that, but you can on a memorized, so you got recurring transactions and you got rules on the bank activities, 2 different ways to do that. Okay. What do we add? We have anything else? Transition.
Well, I think, the transition from desktop to online.
Yeah, the transition from desktop to QBO is, I think, if you're working every day, it's kind of a couple of weeks or so, and you get used to things in the new place. So it's a little frustrating at first because it's different, but I think that there's a couple of, like, the bank feeds, I think works better in online because you're always connected to the bank. The stuff just feeds QuickBooks overnight. You don't have to go retrieve it. So it keeps a little bit more on top of your activity. So some things I think work better in online. Some things are maybe a little bit better in desktop. So there's a transition of getting used to it period. But I made the switch myself about maybe 8 years ago, and with clients, I'm going back and forth between desktop and QBO all the time, and so I got to stop and think about where is that in this system. But that's it's just a matter of over time you just kind of get accustomed to it, like with anything new. So going to your point about credit card statements, yeah, anything that you have a statement for, bills, loans, checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, I recommend connecting those to online bank feeds so that it's going to keep you more on top of QuickBooks. And this is true for desktop and online, that have that automated. One of my mantras is NEDT, never enter data twice. So if you can get the system to enter the payee, the date, and the amount for you, and all you got to do is assign a class, it's a lot less data entry that you got to worry about. So bank feeds, I think, is your friend, and then that in combination with rules to classify it. With the rules, it's adding that extra level of automation. So instead of never entering data twice, people are using the rules to NED, never enter data. Let the system enter it for you, right? So we're trying to, and I think online is a little bit better in automation than desktop, but desktop is improving all the time. So they've made strides in their rules and how that works. So that's another way to kind of reduce your admin burden and let the system do more and more for you. Any other new questions? Did I miss any?
I have one I just put in the chat. Do you know if QuickBooks will be continuing to support desktop software? I noticed that it was tough when I got a Mac to get desktop for QuickBooks.
Yeah, great question. So, and that comes up a lot in conferences when we have representatives from Intuit in the conferences. You know, I attend an annual QuickBooks Consulting Conference, and Intuit always has a presence there. And that question often comes up, and their official stance is we're going to keep putting out desktop as long as people are using it. So I think about 2 or 3 years ago, the installed user base of QBO surpassed desktop. So there's like 4.5 to 5 million QuickBooks Online users now and about 4 million desktop users. But that's still a lot of users, 4 million users. There's a lot of people on desktop that like the desktop, that don't want to switch. They may have third-party apps that only work with desktop. So desktop is going to be around. In fact, they're still adding new features to desktop. There was the last update cycle, there was a bunch of new features added. So there's still support into its official stances. Yes, it's not going away. They recently did drop what was called the Perpetual licenses, where it used to be you could buy a desktop and it was fully supported for 3 years. They dropped those 3 years cycle, and now all the desktop products are on an annual subscription basis.
Wow.
So that's a change as of last December. So you have to, whereas, all the online products are a monthly subscription, the desktop products are now an annual subscription. If you don't keep current on your subscription, I think the system just sort of locks down and becomes read-only until you catch up on your subscription fee. So that was a change in how they sell it, but the products are still there. And one of the advantages now, it's called, instead of Pro or Premier or Enterprise has been on a subscription basis for a while. So instead of Pro and Premier, it's now called Pro Plus and Premier Plus, the desktop products. And because they're now on a subscription basis, new features are kind of rolled out. You don't have to wait to the end of the year or to your next year upgrade. New features kind of get rolled into the product more often. So instead of waiting till the next time I get an upgrade, then you can get a new feature next time you get a regular Monday update. New features kind of roll in.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay.
Susie wanted to know, if I add a credit card to banking, will all my purchases on that credit card show on QuickBooks?
Yeah, so good question. So when when you go to add an account to banking, we'll go back to the banking center. There's a little, let me minimize this. When I go to banking, at the top of the screen, there's add an account, link an account, or add an account. When you do that, you'll log on to your bank the first time, and all kinds of banks, Citibank, Chase, Wells, a lot of credit card companies as well as banks have a QuickBooks interface. Most often, when you make that first time connection, it'll ask you, how far back do you want to go? And it's a little bit subject to the bank, how much they make available. I think Bank of America, you can go back several years. Some of these, it might be Chase or one of them, you can only back maybe 12 months or so. So most often, that first time you make a connection, you get a chance to supply a cutoff date. Just give me going back to set certain date, and then anything from that point forward gets loaded into bank feeds. It depends on the bank too. Some of the systems, before you do the download, you might have to set a filter. I want to just start, January 1st and forward, and then you create the download based on that filter. So to a certain extent, it depends on the bank, but you do have an opportunity that first time you do a download to specify a date range, and then after that, it's just any transaction since the last download. Okay.
Susie says, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Chantel, so my NEDT. For small service companies like a cleaning, okay, I want to sync payments to, okay. Sync invoices, payments, employees capture into QBO. All right. So with QuickBooks Online, so you're talking about if they're out, if you've got employees on the field buying supplies or something that they're bringing to a job site, they're using a company issued credit card or something. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I meant like they're doing the cleaning and then they capture the revenue side, the AR.
Okay. So you want to know that they've in fact done some work at a certain job site.
Right. And then it pushes over into.
Yeah.
QuickBooks.
So most often that's done by a time capture software. So they're gonna be, there's a lot of different time tracking apps. Intuit liked one so much that they bought one. It used to be called T-Sheets and they relabeled it to QuickBooks Time. That's the one I use and the one I usually recommend. It's bundled right into QuickBooks. So if you have T-Sheets, there's actually a button on the side called Time, and it launches T-Sheets and goes to this time tracking app. And that has a mobile app that your employees can download right to their phone, whether they're using a personal device or a company issued device. You can download this T-Sheets app to their phone, and when they get to the job site, it's aware enough based on the customer's address to know that do you want to log in at customer XYZ, because it knows you're at that address, at that location. So so it's GPS aware. So you can log in and time, time in, clock in, clock out when they're on the job site and capture the hours they spent on the job, enter notes, what they did while they were on the site, and all those notes flow from T-Sheets right into QuickBooks. If I go to new, there's a time capture functionality. So that's going to populate this timesheet where it'll have what customer they're working on, the services, what activity they did, design work in this case, what customer they worked on. So this will all be logged in, from their mobile app while they're on site, and what hours they worked. And then these hours can be used to create your invoicing, whether you're invoicing for the visit or, by the hour, you can start with that time capture. Also, QBO has a companion mobile app so that you can actually have QuickBooks Online available on your phone, where you can log in and enter an invoice, from your phone if you're not just doing time. That would require all your workforce to actually have full access to QuickBooks. Whereas if you're just letting time, a lot of times anybody can do time, but you don't want everybody in to see all your QuickBooks. So the time tracking app is typically the way to go for that kind of scenario.
Ed, would that be good for anybody who's doing consulting work or attorneys that are working billable hours?
Yeah, anybody that tracks time, whether they're billing by the hour or even just tracking time internally for what's your effort on a given job, I would recommend a time tracking app that works with QuickBooks. T-Sheets is a terrific one, but there's a lot of others out there. Clock Shark, there's another one called Time Tracker. Yeah, there's many. In fact, that's a good segue. If I go to another website and I go to apps.com. Apps.com, so control enter. These are all the apps that work with QuickBooks. And you can track them by category. So if I'm looking for a time tracking, track time, here's all the ones. These are all certified to work with QuickBooks. So if you're a legal firm, I know a lot of companies use this lien law. What happened? Lien law, time tracker by ability. So all of these, big time, minute 7, Clock Shark is one I just mentioned. So this is the one I'm using, QuickBooks Time. It's got 10,000 reviews, most of them are 4. So this only has 84 reviews. So, that tells you there's a lot of people using QuickBooks Time, right? So, so there's a lot of them. That anything on this website has to go through some vetting process that they have to prove to Intuit that they integrate correctly with QuickBooks software. So to be on this website, it has to work with QuickBooks. But there's a lot out there. QB Time is the one I'm most familiar with, and I'm actually certified to work with that. So I've passed the test on that. I understand how it works. So those are the ones I recommend. And any business that tracks their hours, whether it's for billing purposes or just for internal utilization, measurement. I definitely recommend an external time tracking app that interfaces with QuickBooks. Okay. Betty mentions that you can have an unlimited number of time tracking only users that can get access to QuickBooks just for time tracking purposes. That's if they're entering time directly into QuickBooks. If you're using one of these time tracking apps, you don't even have to set them up in QuickBooks. You can invite them to this system. They can enter their time, and they don't have to be a user in QuickBooks to be able to track the time which gets sent to QuickBooks. So it's a little kind of a subtle difference, but yeah, there is such a thing as a time tracking only user that doesn't count to your user count. But that's not necessary in most of these apps. You can just invite them to the app, and then the app, there's an admin that controls the time that going from the app into QuickBooks. So yeah, good point. Okay. Anything else? Anything new? We have, you see, I was encouraged to see a number of bookkeepers and pro advisors on here. So that's great. I try to keep current on what's going on by attending an annual conference. I don't know if any of you folks have heard of Scaling New Heights. That's a conference that I recommend and attend to. So that kind of keeps you current on best practices, third-party apps. You get a chance to meet with the vendors. And there's a lot of training opportunities on that. So that's how I try to keep in touch with what's going on, pulse of the industry. And there's a lot of advancement, practice management, practice advancement opportunities at that conference. What else? So I've been spending a lot of time on QuickBooks Online. How about with desktop? Going back to some of those same features. With desktop, there's a memorized transaction. So if I'm in any transaction, say I'm on an expense transaction, write checks, just go back to an existing one. So here's that's a paycheck. Let me see if I can find not a paycheck, regular bill. All right, so here's a bill payment. See if I can find just an expense. These are all bill payments. All right, well, kind of a cool tip in in desktop while I'm talking to it is if you go to reports, there's this transaction history, so you can get a quick list of anything connected to a transaction. So if I want to go to a bill that's connected to that invoice, I can go use that reports history button to give me a little forensic accounting on how to find things. But once I get into a bill, any transaction has this little memorize button here, and that's where I can, where the equivalent in online is the recurrent transaction. Desktop has this memorized transaction. Once I memorize something, it's available in this memorized transaction list. So anything I memorize is here. Likewise, if I'm in online, anything that I memorized under the gear, there's a recurring transactions list where I can edit. I can see what I've memorized and edit those or change those schedules as I need to. Let's see, we got a new inventory. So Betty, are you on desktop or online? Let's start with online. Okay, so if you're in online, going back to the let's see. Under the product and services list, well, actually I can find it in here. There's a new inventory quantity adjustment. You can do quantity adjustments. So here's the screen. We'll take all my inventory items. And I don't know if this system I have even has inventory items. So let me give me a quick look, move this out of the way. Let me take a quick look at my product list to see if I even have this sample file has inventory items. It's got a couple. Okay. So pump inventory. Okay, great. So let's say the current quantity on hand is 25 of this pump, and it should be 22, for instance. And this rock fountain, I should have 4 of those. So I got a pump and a rock fountain. So I can go to that new inventory quantity, and any of those items that are on here. There's a pump, tells you quantity on hand, the quantity should be, specify that, and then I go to another item. My rock fountain, say it says 2, I really should I have 4 up there. So it's going to actually, you can only adjust quantity on hand. You can do that every item that you have. You can specify in this inventory adjustment. The difference is going to calculate based on the QuickBooks Online uses FIFO, so it's going to use the FIFO lots to figure out how to value this change, but it's going to give you a change in quantity based on physical counts compared to what my currently online quantity is, and it'll adjust quantity based on that, and it'll use that the FIFO purchase history to value that difference. It's going to put the whole difference in this account that I specify up here. Shrinkage is sort of the recommended account, but you might have inventory adjustments or whatever you want to call it is your account. So I'm going to make these adjustments, save and close. I didn't specify the class. That's okay. Save that. So now if I look at my inventory adjustments account, or my shrinkage account, just find it real quick. I'm going to see the run report, because it's a P&L run report. I'm going to see that I had an adjustment today that was valued at net $220. So the reason I have multiple items in here is because the way it may have to navigate through the FIFO lots. You may have multiple adjustments to get the FIFO valuation of those quantity adjustments. So that is valued at 220. So it's that under the gear, it's that so not the gear, the transaction, new transaction inventory, a quantity adjustment is the way to do that.
Okay, is there a problem with adjusting inventory to 0 if they are being used on an invoice?
Yeah, so you want to avoid having your inventory go negative. So if you adjust something down to 0 and then you put it on an invoice after it's 0, that's going to give you negative quantity, and that causes problems. So negative quantity is just going to mess up your P&L reporting.
Mm-hmm.
So avoid your inventory going negative. So logically, you can't ship something. An invoice should be when you're shipping something. You can't ship if you don't have it to ship. So that means something's wrong with the system if you don't have the quantity available, but yet in fact you're putting on a truck to go out. So you want to do the inventory adjustment dated before the date of the invoice, so that you have the right quantity on hand for the invoice is going to be reducing inventory by what was sent out the door. So you want to make sure.
So it has to be coordinated with the date of the invoice.
Yeah.
And what is being
I have a lot of
shipped
clients
out.
that are, they're in such a hurry to get their invoices out that they're sending those out right away, but then they get kind of caught up with their inventory tracking after the fact. And if you let your inventory go negative, that creates problems. And that's true in desktop and online. But so you want to make sure that you don't create an invoice to ship something if the quantity is not available to support it. You want to fix the quantity before you do that invoice.
Okay, if it's already a negative number and you are not using that item anymore, can you just change it to 0?
Yeah, so you'd have to do an inventory adjustment to bring it up to 0 before you can make that item inactive. It won't let you make it won't let an item inactive if it has a negative. In fact, you shouldn't make it inactive if it has any quantity at all. So you can make an item inactive, but you should adjust the quantity to be 0 before you do that.
Okay.
So
Got
if you're using QBO and you're doing a lot of stuff with inventory, I'd recommend an inventory add-on product. The QBO is really kind of limited functionality for inventory. There's a lot of add-on products that really do inventory pretty well with QuickBooks. The one I work with is called SOS Inventory. So that's going to give you, back order tracking. It's going to give you barcoding capabilities. It's going to give you, a lot more functionality working with inventory than QuickBooks out of the box has. It's really,
Right.
it's limited functionality. If you're not a heavy inventory company, it might be fine. But if you're doing a lot of stuff with inventory items, you might want to consider an inventory add-on.
Okay, I've used SOS as well with a past client, and it's a great program. I like that. The situation I have is I have a current client who started their QuickBooks with inventory items but didn't really understand what the inventory is, and those items should have been added as non-inventory.
Yeah.
Because once the inventory count got screwed up and they started going into negative, the CPA could not close the books with a negative inventory. So we're trying to get rid of hundreds of negative inventory items. So I was curious if there was a way to do that in bulk.
Yeah, so that inventory quantity, bring all the negatives up to 0, and it's going to give you this big hit, for that year. But then, that will straighten out going forward. But yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be a big hit on the inventory shrinkage, and that's okay.
Well, it's because it was wrong in a prior period, so you're kind of catching up. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, but that's really the only way to do it. And then what does the dollar value kind of add up to make those adjustments? And if it's material enough to do a prior period adjustment, you couldn't go negative unless you did something wrong in a prior period to begin with. So
right, even if it's in a different year.
Yeah, it's a different. You'll have to decide on materiality. Do you need to restate financials or not? So that's kind of beyond the work I do as far as period adjustments. But so that's really what was wrong. It was wrong in a prior period for you to get to negative to begin with. So QuickBooks Online will let you change the type of an item, I believe. So once you have an inventory item that shouldn't have been an inventory item, so say this rock fountain, say I don't want to count inventory on this. Let me give a better example.
You can change an inventory to a non-inventory. You can change a non-inventory to an inventory, but you can't change an inventory to a non-inventory. We already tried that.
You already tried that. Yeah, you can't. There's no change type once it's inventory. Yeah.
Right.
So the thing to do with that is you just rename this to give it some other name and make it adjust it the quantity to 0, and then create a new name that's called what you used to call this. Make a new one, an inventory item.
Right. That's what we did, but it was hundreds, probably thousands of items, some of which she doesn't use anymore.
Yeah.
So we did the ones that she consistently uses, and then we're trying to get rid of the old ones that she doesn't use anymore.
Yeah. When you have like massive bulk adjustments like that, and there's an add-on product that will do a lot of edits. So you can basically dump all your negative to Excel, use that Excel, and I use one called Cezant. So Cezant is a third-party utility that you can
SASS.
Yeah, SAASANT.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it.
And what this will do is it will allow you to do edits and deletes and this works with desktop and online, but so you're working on online, so you can dump what you need to in the file, and then use Cezant to create your inventory adjustments, from a file. So instead of doing one by one into that other screen, you can you figure out in Excel how to, whatever the quantity is, I want to adjust it, plus whatever to get it to the, the new value of 0. And then you can also use says add to, I think you can do like bulk edits, like make all of these items inactive and then add these new items as non-inventory parts.
Oh,
So you can use this for, to bulk add items as well as bulk edit existing items.
okay. All right, that's what I'll have to do with the rest of them. She's been working on them one by one, and it's tedious. It's
Yeah. So you can do them. You can sort of speed that up a little bit by using this tool to take all the data in Excel and then import it in a big batch. So
okay. Thank you.
yeah. Okay.
There's one more question from Teresa, Ed, if you can take
Okay.
it. Can you
Yeah.
speak about the desktop capabilities for 1099s, W-2s, and payroll potentiality?
Yeah, sure. So for desktop, so if you're a 1090, if you have a 1099 vendor, so and online works very similarly. On the vendor record, so say this, let me find a good candidate, say Dave's business search. So say Dave is a 1099 vendor. Vendor tile, I'm going to hit edit up here. Under the, I think it's tax settings. Yeah, this little checkbox here marks the vendor for 1099 tracking. Online has a similar thing on the vendor tile. There's a place for 1099 tracking. And then once I have that, then this vendor's tax ID should go in this screen, whatever it is. So the tax ID goes in here, you check this box, and then that tracks all his activity. Now, then there's the next thing you have to do is in vendor, there's this 1099 wizard. You have to go through, I don't know if it's in the sample file, I'm not sure if I can duplicate the whole thing, but there's a little wizard. Where is it? I thought it was under vendors. 1099 forms that you have to map. There's a place where you have to map which account categories are 1099 tracking. So you have to specify that it's last calendar year, 1099 options. Oh, you know what? In vendors, it's in desktop, it's under preferences, I think. Here, text and then company preferences. So here, mapping. So you do the mapping from preferences. And so this process, you have to specify which accounts are going to be here. This is what I was looking for. 1099 NEC, non-employee compensation versus miscellaneous for other things like rent payments and legal payments and stuff are under MIS still. So in this mapping process, you specify which are the categories or which are my 1099 vendors. That's one. So you go through this, this little mapping, verify the vendors, continue, verify that you get the 1099 info, continue. This mapping is the key thing that people ought to skip. So I have to specify which are the categories that I might categorize accounts to a 1099 vendor. So for instance, in job expenses, it could be in this, job materials, subcontractors, freight and delivery. So whatever I might hire a subcontractor for, however I categorize their expenses, that has to be mapped as a 1099 tracking. That way, if you're paying, sometimes you're reimbursing a vendor for expenses, that's not 1099 trackable, but when you're paying them for work they're doing for you, you classify that as a subcontractor, some other category. So that's why you have to go through this mapping process. And that tags what activity needs to be tracked for 1099 purposes. And then, so that mapping is done. Online has something similar. Then to actually, QuickBooks will send the 1099s out for you, but I prefer using a third-party add-in that I call, called Track 1099. And there's a couple others besides this one, but thing I like about Track 1099 is it will keep track, it'll e-file the 1099s to the federal and the state for you. It'll keep track of, you email the 1099s to your vendors. It keeps track of whether the vendor opened the email or not. If they didn't open it timely, then you can send them a paper copy. So it has a little bit more tracking, and I just find this easier to use than Intuit's own built-in version. Avalara is a company that does sales tax tracking. They bought the Track 1099 a couple of years ago. So that's, it's back behind a pretty big company that's nationwide. So that's what I use for 1099 tracking. And just a little bit easier. It'll take the data right from Intuit. It's more seamless for QBO. It'll interface directly with your QBO file. For desktop, you have to run, there's a big long procedure on how to create a report that you import into this to get all your data. So if you don't have too many, it's almost just as easy to manually enter them. But for the tracking purposes, I like this better. And the pricing is pretty reasonable. I think it's like, a couple bucks per form. So if I'm only sending out, say, 10 forms, oops, 10, oops, the tracking. So the price goes down per form as you do more and more. So that's what I use for 1099 tracking. Inline, there's some capabilities they'll do some filings for you, but I find the system just does a little bit more that makes it easier to manage. Okay.
Any more questions?
Oh, that's 1099s. I didn't talk about W-2s and payroll.
Oh yeah.
Teresa's question. So for payroll, there's a lot of payroll systems. There's Paychex, there's ADP, there's Solex, there's several others. But Intuit has their own payroll system. I am an Intuit reseller, so I also sell Intuit products. I find there's not a perfect payroll system out there, but the Intuit products, the reason I kind of prefer that over some external product is because the accounting is all integrated. If I have an external payroll company, I still got to enter my all my data into QuickBooks to get the data flow. If I have an Intuit payroll, it's done as part of running payroll. So on my sample company, let's see if I don't know if payroll is activated on here. Let me close this. Payroll. Looks like it's on. Yeah. So actually, I go to Emily. Oh, I switched to online. So the payroll's not activated for the online test file, but if I go to my desktop file, I think that is on. And they work the same, very similar. So if I go to my home page, if payroll's on, I see these pay buttons now. So it has all of the tracking, it'll keep track of the liabilities, when they're payment, when they're past due, it'll start alerting you. It'll do e-filing for all the federal forms. It'll e-file some of the state forms. Depends on the level of service you have. So there's like a full service level that will do more with the state than the basic level will. So it has all the payroll capabilities kind of built in, and then you don't have to worry about the accounting. If you are using an external file, I would record. Every time you run payroll, you get like a payroll register that gives you all the accounting. I would memorize that as either a memorized check that has all the accounting in it with the gross pay to all the deductions and company matching expenses and all that. And you can memorize that and then change the amounts from payroll to pay run. You can do it with a memorized journal entry. Some of these systems, ADP, I think, has a payroll interface that will create a file that you can import into QuickBooks that has the pay data. But if you're doing any kind of job costing, you need that hours by person, how many hours went to a job, then the easiest way to do that is to have Intuit Payroll, because you got all the hours by job captured in the system, and it's going to allocate payroll according to those hours. So from that standpoint, an Intuit Payroll is going to give you a little bit more reporting than an external payroll where you're just doing a bulk entry for the whole run for everybody.
Ginny, did that answer your question about memorizing a paycheck in QB desktop?
Yeah, so I wouldn't memorize individual paychecks because they're going to change, and then you got each paycheck is going to have each person's gross to net calculation. I would do a one memorized transaction for the entire payroll run for everybody. So that way, you're not doing that full gross to net accounting for each individual person. You're just doing it for in total for the whole payroll run. But you can memorize a paycheck if I'm in desktop again. And if I had Intuit Payroll, you were just I switched to the wrong one again. Sorry. Here's my desktop. If you have Intuit Payroll, then you're just running. When I go to pay employees, you just have a pay schedule of everybody that's in my weekly or biweekly schedule. You're just going to run payroll for all them based on the hours you've import, or if there's salary, you don't care about hours. So that's done. But if you don't have Intuit Payroll, you're not really running paychecks. You're just recording checks for each person, and you can memorize those just like it's a vendor check. So if it's a paycheck, you have to have the payroll subsystem added on to actually create a paycheck. So it's a different kind of transaction. And if you don't have Intuit Payroll, then it's instead of memorizing a paycheck, you're just putting them on salary, or there's actually a function even if they're hourly and they're always consistently 40 hours a week, you can memorize that time. There's let me go to an example of a person. If I go to Dan Miller, there's a check, use time data to create paychecks. And then there's another, if you're using time data to create paychecks, then there is a switch to say, copy last week's hours to this week's, if you've got someone that's just always 40 hours a week. So that kind of automates that as much as you can, I think. Okay.
And Teresa said, what tool do you recommend to calculate the taxes and unemployment per employee?
Yeah, so if I'm manually doing payroll and I'm not if I'm using a payroll service, the payroll service is doing all the calculations for me. If I'm just doing a manual payroll and I want to calculate myself, I'm always nervous about that because you got to be worried about keeping track of any rate changes or updates. So if I'm not using a payroll service, I'm doing it manually. There are a lot of payroll calculators out there. So I think Intuit has their own. If I do payroll Intuit, I think they have a whole website of calculators, but there's some out there. Let me minimize this. Payroll. Somewhere here, there's a link for calculators, but yeah, I haven't done a manual calculation in ages. I've always relied on that service to do it. So calculators. I know there's one in here somewhere. It's been a long time since I've actually looked at it. Payroll. So yeah, I don't have any particular one that I favor because I'm always relying on the service for all those calculations for deductions. So I don't have a specific recommendation other than what payroll service. And I prefer the Intuit Payroll Service just because that integrated accounting, it's one less step I got to worry about. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Betty. It's a lot of aggravation to do it yourself. So a payroll service is kind of the way to go. Did I miss anything?
I think.
Check salary. So yeah, so if you're not using payroll, Jenny, you can just take a regular check to a person and memorize it as a, paid, on a every 2-week basis. But if you're using a payroll service, then the payroll service is going to handle that for you. Okay. I think I cover those. Oh, Betty makes the point too that if you're using payroll service, most of them, if they make a calculation mistake, they'll cover any fines and penalties you might get. Intuit has the same thing. They have it's error guaranteed. So yeah, that's a good point. Payroll service, will cover. Intuit has multiple levels of service. So payroll pricing, if you look at the comparison between the multiple versions, premium, one of the functions of the elite service, core premium, there's one other one called elite, but they have plans include
Calculate paychecks.
Yeah, there's a calculation guarantee kind of thing in here. I'm not seeing it exactly right. It's one of these, but the higher level elite has the highest level of they'll cover you even if it's your fault, if you pay for the elite service. So there's one of these expert review time tracking. So it's one of these features is in here. So yeah, so that's a good point too, using a payroll service to kind of cover you for any calculation mistakes. So. Okay.
Nice. Well, Ed, thank you so much. I don't think we stumped you.
I was kind of worried about this presentation. I'm hanging myself out there. So I hope I was able to answer your questions and at least give you a few ideas about some of the features out there. There's so much about QuickBooks. There's, like I said, there's 4 million online users and almost 4 million desktop users. So out of 8 million QuickBooks users, I'm just looking for like 1% of that market. Is that too much to ask? So there's a lot of people out there.
Ed, thank you so much. Very well done. Not easy.
Okay. So my contact information is on my website. If anyone has a follow-up question, my website is SMB Partners. You just go to it real quickly. SMB Partners. The easiest way to track me down is on the bottom of my website. There's a little scroll down the bottom. There's a little booking appointment. So that's the way that has an opens my calendar. You can book in time for a Zoom call or a consult meeting. So also on my website under the products lists, you'll have my price sheets for my reselling prices and other add-ons that we work with and recommend on the partners page. So
very nice.
So I'm glad. And then the About Us contact is my website is my business partner. So you can also connect me through, there's a LinkedIn profile. You can link in with me. I also have a Facebook page, etc. So and another way to book an appointment on here. So ways to reach me. I hope I was able to answer questions. I got a couple more comments I see popped up in chat. Great. Yep. So glad to have this opportunity to meet with you folks, and would be happy to further discussion on a one-on-one basis for anybody that has something that didn't answer, or you think of something else down the road. I'd be happy to talk with you and sort of spread the wealth.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone and your wonderful questions. I guess we all learned on everybody's questions. So that's the benefit of this. So Thank you for joining us, and we'll have Pam, we have a speaker series next month?
Yes, we do. We have on knowing your cybersecurity risk. It's on May 24th. You can go to our website and look under speaker series, under events at www.cranberrycountry.org.
And that's a big hot topic right now, especially now.
Yep.
Well, everybody have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Glad to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Betty.
Thank you. You too, Val.